The story begins. Settle yourself comfortably now and let the day's tensions drift away like morning mist over the Aegean Sea. We're about to embark on a journey through ancient tales, through stories that have been whispered beneath starlit skies for thousands of years. Tonight, we turn our attention to one of the most revered figures in all of Greek mythology, a goddess whose wisdom illuminated the ancient world like a torch in darkness, whose strategic mind guided heroes through impossible trials, and whose very presence brought order to chaos. We speak, of course, of Athena, known to the Greeks as the bright-eyed goddess, the protector of cities, the patroness of heroes, and the guardian of civilization itself. The Romans would call her Minerva, but tonight we honor her by her Greek name, the name that echoed through marble temples and across sun-drenched agoras, the name that sailors invoked before setting out to sea, and warriors spoke before entering battle. Imagine, if you will, standing on the rocky prominence of the Acropolis in Athens, that sacred hill that rises above the ancient city like a crown of stone. The evening air is warm, scented with wild thyme, and the salt breeze drifting up from the port of Piraeus. Behind you, the columns of the Parthenon glow golden in the setting sun, that magnificent temple dedicated to Athena Parthenos, Athena the Virgin. The marble seems to breathe in this gentle light, and you can almost sense the presence of the goddess herself, watching over her beloved city. But before we can understand Athena's deep connection to Athens, before we can explore her many gifts to humanity and her crucial role in the great tales of heroes, we must begin at the very beginning. And Athena's beginning is unlike any other in all of Greek mythology. It is a story that speaks of prophecy and fear, of transformation and cunning, and ultimately of a birth so extraordinary that the very heavens trembled at its occurrence. So breathe deeply now, and let your mind drift back through the centuries, back past the classical age of Pericles, past the heroic age of Achilles and Odysseus, back to the time when the Olympian gods were newly victorious over the Titans, when Zeus had only recently claimed his throne as king of all the gods. It is here, in this time of divine transition, that our story truly begins. The prophecy and the birth. In the early days of Zeus's reign, after the great war called the Titanomachy had ended, and the old order of Titans had been cast down into Tartarus, the king of the gods took as his first consort a Titaness named Metis. Now, Metis was no ordinary being, even among the immortals. Her very name meant wisdom or cunning intelligence in the Greek tongue, and she was renowned throughout the cosmos for her profound understanding and her clever counsel. Among all the children of Oceanus and Tethys, those 3,000 daughters known as the Oceanids, Metis stood out as the wisest, the most thoughtful, the most strategic in her thinking. The ancient poet Hesiod, in his great work The Theogony, tells us that Zeus made Metis his wife first, before all his other marriages. This was no mere romantic fancy on the part of the king of the gods. Zeus recognized in Metis a kindred spirit, someone whose intelligence could match his own ambition, whose counsel could guide him in the delicate early days of his rule. For Zeus, though mighty beyond measure, understood that power without wisdom is a dangerous thing, as likely to destroy the wielder as to serve him. Metis and Zeus together conceived a child, and for a time, all seemed well in the heavens. But then came whispers of a prophecy, dark words spoken by Gaia, the ancient earth herself, and by Uranos, the primal sky. These two primordial beings who had witnessed the cycles of divine succession from the very beginning warned Zeus of a terrible fate. The words of their prophecy were precise and chilling. The child that Metis carried, they said, would indeed be born, and she would be a daughter of extraordinary power, equal to Zeus himself in strength and wisdom. But this daughter would not be the end of the matter. Metis, they foretold, was destined to bear a second child, and this one would be a son. This son would surpass his father in might and cunning, would grow to challenge Zeus's authority, and would ultimately overthrow him to become the new king of the gods, just as Zeus had overthrown his own father, Kronos, and just as Kronos had overthrown his father, Uranos, before him. We must pause here to understand the weight of this prophecy. For Zeus, the memory of his own rebellion against his father was still fresh. He remembered how Kronos, fearful of being overthrown, had swallowed each of his children as they were born, how Zeus alone had escaped this fate through his mother Rhea's cleverness, how Zeus had then freed his siblings and led the war that toppled the Titans. Zeus knew, perhaps better than anyone, that the cycle of divine succession was written in blood and thunder. The prophecy presented Zeus with a terrible dilemma. He could not simply kill Metis, for she was immortal, and the gods cannot truly die. He could not abandon her, for she already carried his child. And he could not ignore the prophecy, for Gaia and Uranos spoke with the authority of primordial truth. Their words were not mere predictions, they were statements of cosmic inevitability, patterns woven into the very fabric of fate. So Zeus, demonstrating the cunning that would characterize his long reign, devised a plan. Using honeyed words and gentle persuasion, He convinced Metis to display her shape-shifting abilities, a talent common among the older generation of divine beings. Metis, suspecting nothing, obliged her husband, transforming herself into various forms to demonstrate her skill. She became a bird, then a fish, then smaller and smaller creatures, delighting in her own cleverness. When Metis had transformed herself into something very small, tradition tells us a fly or perhaps a drop of water, Zeus struck. In one swift motion, he swallowed her whole, consuming her along with the daughter she carried in her womb. The other gods watched in shock as Zeus's throat moved, as he swallowed his own wife and unborn child. But Zeus simply smiled and said nothing, and none dared question the king of the gods. And so Metis took up residence within Zeus himself, dwelling in his belly, just as Zeus and his siblings had once dwelt in the belly of Kronos. But unlike Kronos' children, Metis did not remain passive. Though trapped, she continued her work, continued to grow the child within her, continued to whisper counsel to Zeus from within his own body. Zeus had not destroyed the prophecy, he had merely internalized it, had made the wisdom of Metis a part of himself. For a time, all seemed to return to normal on Mount Olympus. Zeus went about the business of ruling, taking other wives, having other children. The gods held their councils, mortals below offered their prayers and sacrifices, and the cosmos turned according to its ancient rhythms. But within Zeus, Metis worked. Within Zeus, the child grew. Within Zeus, something miraculous was taking shape. The day finally came when Zeus experienced the most extraordinary sensation. A splitting, agonizing pain began to build in his head, a pressure unlike anything the god had ever felt. It grew and grew, intensifying with each passing moment until even the king of the gods, who had weathered lightning bolts and battled with titans, could bear it no longer. He roared in agony, his cry echoing across Olympus and down to the mortal world below, where people looked up in fear at the terrible sound from above. The other gods rushed to Zeus's aid, gathering around their king in concern and confusion. Different accounts tell us different things about what happened next. Some say it was Prometheus, the titan who had sided with Zeus in the Great War, who took action. Others credit Hephaestus, the divine blacksmith and son of Hera. Still others name Hermes, the swift messenger, or even Ares, the god of war. But all agree on one essential fact. Someone took up the sacred double-headed axe, the labris, and with a mighty swing struck Zeus's skull. The blow split open the head of Zeus, and in that moment, something extraordinary occurred. From the wound in Zeus's head, fully grown and fully armed, sprang forth the goddess Athena. She did not emerge as an infant, helpless and crying. She was born as a complete adult, already clad in shining armor, already bearing a shield and spear, already wearing the crested helmet that would become her signature attribute. And as she emerged, she gave a mighty war cry, a shout of such power and glory that the earth itself trembled. The first Homeric hymn to Athena, an ancient song of praise to the goddess, describes this moment in vivid terms. When Athena sprang forth, the hymn tells us, all the gods were struck with awe. Even Helios, the god of the sun himself, stopped his golden chariot in its course across the sky to witness this unprecedented birth. The sun stood still, and for a moment, day and night held their breath as the goddess took her first steps on Mount Olympus. The poet Pindar, in his 7th Olympian ode, adds that Athena's cry shook both the sky and Mother Earth. It was a sound that announced not merely the birth of a new goddess, but the arrival of a new kind of divine power. Here was wisdom born from the mind of Zeus, strategy given form and voice, intelligence made manifest in the world. Zeus, miraculously healed from the splitting of his skull, looked upon his daughter with a mixture of pride and wonder. Here was the daughter the prophecy had foretold, equal to him in wisdom and strength. But she was born from his own head, born from his own essence mingled with that of Metis. In a sense, Zeus had indeed given birth alone, though Metis had done the greater work within him. The prophecy's threat of a son to overthrow him had been avoided, the dangerous cycle broken, yet wisdom itself had found its way into the world. As for Hera, Zeus's queen, the sources offer us varying accounts of her reaction. Hesiod tells us that Hera was deeply annoyed at this display of Zeus giving birth without her participation. Her jealousy would lead her to conceive and bear Hephaestus by herself, without Zeus, in an attempt to prove that she too could create life independently. But a later writer, Philostratus the Elder, offers us a different image.